With a clash against the Jets looming, every mistake will be magnified. Gabriel's decision-making has already drawn scrutiny, and the offense is teetering. But instead of adapting, Kevin Stefanski is doubling down. The safe move, the political move, is to suppress. SS practicing Shedeur Sanders rise, despite all signs pointing to Sanders being ready.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The staff continues to withhold meaningful reps. They've got a plan, but it's not built on merit. It's built on avoidance. If Gabriel crumbles under pressure, the controversy they're trying to dodge will explode in their face. And fans aren't buying the injury narrative anymore. In this pressure-filled environment, hiding Sanders is becoming less about strategy and more about denial. Stefanski is trying to preserve a status quo that isn't working, hoping silence can drown out the inevitable. But the longer Sanders sits, the louder the calls become, and the more fractured the locker room risks becoming. Kevin Stefanski's game of evasion just hit its limit. After weeks of cryptic updates and non-answers, it's become painfully obvious. Shedeur Sanders isn't being kept off the field because of injury. He's being shelved for strategy. Only the strategy has nothing to do with football performance and everything to do with politics, optics, and fear. And now, that plan is unraveling in public. The latest press conference didn't help. In fact, it made things worse. Instead of clearing the air, Stefanski doubled down on ambiguity, avoiding every direct question about Sanders' health, progress, or role on the depth chart. No confirmation of QB2 status. No timetable. Just the same tired lines. We'll see how he responds. We're going day to day. We're evaluating. But the evaluations are done. The tape is out. Sanders is back at practice. He's moving, throwing, engaging with teammates. He's checked every box you'd expect from a quarterback preparing to return, except the one the coaching staff seems most determined to keep locked: opportunity. Stefanski's silence isn't cautious. It's calculated. Because he's not just trying to manage Sanders' return. He's trying to manage the narrative. Keep expectations low. Maintain plausible deniability. And most importantly, protect the current starter, Dylan Gabriel, from any hint of a threat. It's not subtle. The Browns' offense has been underperforming for weeks. Gabriel, while competent at times, has clearly hit a ceiling. The offensive rhythm is non-existent. Decision-making has been shaky, and the coaching staff is already shifting responsibilities, including stripping play-calling duties from the offensive coordinator. That's not a vote of confidence. That's panic mode. And yet, even in the middle of that breakdown, Stefanski still won't open the door for Sanders to step up. Why? Because the minute Sanders is named QB2, the clock starts ticking. Every mistake Gabriel makes becomes amplified. Every stalled drive raises a question: why isn't Shedeur in? And at a level of pressure Stefanski seems unwilling to face. Because deep down, he knows what everyone else is starting to suspect. If Sanders gets in, he's not just going to manage the game. He might take over. That's the real risk. Not to the team, but to the people running it. Because once Sanders is allowed to play meaningful reps and start showing what he's capable of, the staff's entire structure is on the line. The decision to keep him on ice despite his readiness will be exposed for what it is: a political stall tactic. And it's not just hurting Sanders. It's hurting the Browns. Right now, they're wasting valuable development time. They're passing up the chance to evolve the offense, energize the locker room, and possibly turn the season around, all for the sake of avoiding a controversy that, let's be honest, already exists. The locker room knows what's going on. They see who's ready. They know who's producing in practice. Sanders isn't a mystery to them. And every time he's sidelined without a clear reason, it sends a message, one that undercuts Stefanski's credibility. If the team feels like decisions are being made for political convenience instead of football merit, trust breaks down. And that's how locker rooms splinter. Shedeur hasn't earned his shot through talk. He's done it through professionalism. He's worked tirelessly through rehab. He hasn't lashed out, hasn't stirred the pot, hasn't made it about him. He stayed locked in, patient, and ready. That's the exact kind of mentality you want in a quarterback. And still, He waits. This isn't a developmental timeline anymore. It's a suppression strategy. Stefanski is treating Sanders like a PR risk instead of a football player. And the longer that continues, the worse it gets. Because the Browns aren't just risking their season, they're risking their future. The signs point to Sanders having franchise-level upside. He has the leadership traits, the discipline, the work ethic, and by all accounts, the talent to make a real impact. But the Browns are treating him like a disruptor, not because of his attitude, but because his presence threatens to reveal that the current plan is failing. Let's be blunt. Stefanski and the coaching staff are prioritizing damage control over progress, and that's not sustainable. The pressure is about to reach a boiling point. The team's upcoming schedule isn't forgiving. The Jets' defense is no joke. If Gabriel flops again, the cries for Sanders won't just come from fans. They'll come from within. The coaches will be forced to make a choice they should have made weeks ago. And if they still don't, if they continue to stall and deflect while the team stumbles, the questions will only grow more urgent. Why was Shedeur hidden? Why wasn't he given a real chance? Who made that decision and why? This doesn't end quietly. If Sanders finally gets on the field and plays well, the fallout will be massive. Every vague press conference quote will be replayed. Every non-answer dissected. The storyline won't be about Shedeur's rise. It'll be about how long the Browns kept him from rising. And that spotlight, it's going to land squarely on Kevin Stefanski. He won't be able to claim he didn't know. He won't be able to hide behind injury reports or coach speak. The truth is already out there. Shedeur is back. He's prepared. And the only thing keeping him out of the lineup is fear. That's not leadership. That's control. And it's costing the Browns. What makes this even more frustrating is how preventable it all was. If the staff had been transparent from the start, acknowledged Shedeur's progress, gave a real update on his status, committed to competition, it could have been a smooth transition. But instead, they chose silence, evasion, denial. And now it's too late to walk it back without scrutiny. This isn't just about a quarterback controversy anymore. It's about what kind of culture the Browns are building. One that rewards readiness and performance, or one that protects the status quo, no matter how much is holding the team back? Shedeur Sanders isn't just a player. He's a test to whether this organization is ready to embrace change, or whether it's going to keep hiding behind strategic silence and outdated loyalty. The answer, so far, hasn't been promising. But there's still time, barely. Stefanski can end this mess now. He can own the moment, acknowledge what's obvious, and give Sanders the opportunity he's earned. Not as a gimmick, not in garbage time, but as a legitimate quarterback option. Because right now, the Browns aren't losing because of lack of talent. They're losing because they're afraid to use it. If you're watching this and shaking your head, you're not alone. Let us know in the comments. Do you think Stefanski is protecting the current regime at the expense of progress? Is Shedeur Sanders being unfairly held back? What would you do if you were running this team? Tap the like button if you're tired of the political games and want to see real competition. Share this with someone who's been following the Browns saga and sees through the spin. And subscribe if you want more breakdowns of the power plays, PR moves, and behind-the-scenes drama that shape the NFL far more than anyone wants to admit. Because this story isn't just about football. It's about who gets to control the future. And right now, it's looking like the Browns are on the wrong side of it. The Browns are sitting on a ticking time bomb, and Kevin Stefanski is pretending he doesn't hear it. Everything about the Shedeur Sanders situation is a textbook case of organizational dysfunction hiding behind polished coach speak. At this point, it's not just speculation. It's not just wait and see. The facts are right there. Shedeur Sanders is back at practice. He's running drills. He's throwing. He's moving. He's ready. And yet he's being kept in this bizarre, silent limbo. Active but ignored, visible but sidelined. Why? Because giving him a real shot means blowing up the carefully controlled facade the Browns have built around their quarterback situation. And Kevin Stefanski? He's clinging to that facade like his job depends on it. Because maybe it does. This is no longer about performance on the field. It's about politics behind the scenes. A coaching staff more focused on preserving control then fixing the problem. A quarterback room that's quietly being managed like a crisis PR situation. And a fan base that's watching it all unfold in real time, furious, confused, and losing patience. Dylan Gabriel is the starter. For now. But it's not because he's earning it. It's because he's a safer narrative. He fits the plan. He represents continuity in a league where disruption scares coaches more than losing does. Stefanski has locked in on Gabriel as his guy, even as he often sputters, even as the results flatline. He's doubled down, hoping Gabriel stabilizes things just long enough to justify keeping Sanders buried. But the longer the charade drags on, the more obvious it becomes. Gabriel isn't saving this team, and Stefanski's insistence on protecting him is doing more harm than good. And then there's Shedeur, professional, quiet, focused, doing everything asked of him and more. He's not pouting. He's not complaining. He's not leaking frustrations to media. He's just there, showing up, proving he's ready without ever saying a word. And that is exactly what makes his absence from the field so damning. There's no excuse left. No reason to keep pretending this is about health. He's cleared. He's active. He's doing the work. But Stefanski's playbook doesn't include letting go of control. He's not ready to hand over the reins, even temporarily, because deep down he knows what might happen next. What happens if Shedeur gets into a game and immediately elevates the offense? What happens if the energy changes? If the players rally around him? If the fan base explodes in support? It won't just be a nice storyline. It'll be a full-blown indictment of everything Stefanski's been doing for the past few months. That's the fear. That's why the press conferences stay vague. That's why the injury updates never say anything. That's why Sanders is stuck in quarterback purgatory. Too good to ignore, too dangerous to unleash. But this holding pattern can't last. Not with high-stakes games approaching. Not with the offense visibly regressing. And definitely not with fans ready to riot every time Gabriel throws a short check down on 3rd and 12. The public is over it. The media is over it. And inside that building, you can feel it bubbling. Players know. Assistants know. Nobody operates in a vacuum. They see who's performing in practice. They see who commands a huddle. And they see who's being left on the bench for reasons that have nothing to do with football. The longer Stefanski resists, the more isolated he becomes. This is no longer a coaching decision. It's turning into a leadership failure. When your refusal to pivot is costing games, eroding morale, and alienating your locker room, you're not protecting the team. You're protecting yourself. And the Browns? They're the ones paying the price. They're wasting games. They're wasting reps. They're wasting time. And they're sitting on a quarterback who, by every credible measure, is ready to contribute, ready to compete, ready to lead. But Shedeur Sanders is being treated like a risk, not an asset. And that's where this whole thing flips from frustrating to infuriating. Because every coach in the league talks about next man up, about competing every day, about earning your shot. Well, Sanders has earned it. And instead of being rewarded, he's being suppressed. And not because he's doing something wrong, but because he might be too right. Because if Shedeur plays and shines, it breaks the illusion. It proves the coaching staff got it wrong. That they bet on the wrong guy. That they stalled out a player who could have changed their season simply because they didn't want to deal with the fallout. And here's the kicker. They will have to deal with it sooner or later because the situation isn't static. It's escalating. Gabriel doesn't have a cushion anymore. Every mistake now feels heavier. Every failed drive echoes louder. And every shot of Shedeur standing on the sideline with a helmet and no role is a reminder that the Browns might be actively sabotaging their own potential. That's not drama. That's the truth. And if Stefanski thinks he can ride out this storm with vague updates and we're taking it day-by-day sound bites, he's misreading the moment completely. This isn't going away. In fact, the longer it's avoided, the worse it's going to get. If the Browns lose a crucial game, especially against a defense like the Jets, and Gabriel struggles again, there's no more hiding, no more spinning, no more excuses. The calls for Shedeur won't just come from fans and media. They'll come from inside. The team is waiting. The public is waiting. And Shedeur Sanders? He's waiting, too. And when the moment finally comes, when Stefanski has no choice but to make the change, it won't be seen as a calculated pivot. It'll be seen as a last resort, a desperate correction after weeks of avoidable dysfunction. And if Sander performs, if he steps in and immediately brings life to an offense that's been dragging for weeks, the fallout will be brutal. Every decision, every delay, every press conference quote will get dragged into the light. Why didn't they do this sooner? Why did they pretend he wasn't ready? Who made that call? And what else are they hiding? Because that's what happens when you suppress talent, when you keep the best option off the field for the sake of preserving power. You don't just risk games, you risk your credibility. And once that's gone, it's gone. Kevin Stefanski is out of time, out of rope, out of room to stall. He can keep trying to manage this with silence, but the silence has turned into noise. Loud, relentless noise. And the second Shedeur Sanders steps onto the field and proves what we've all been suspecting, that noise becomes a narrative. And Stefanski, he becomes the guy who tried to keep it buried. Let's be very clear. The Browns aren't just dragging their feet. They're actively sabotaging their own momentum. There's no longer a reasonable explanation for Shedeur Sanders being buried on the depth chart, especially when the current starter is barely keeping the offense on life support. And every time Kevin Stefanski gets in front of a microphone and dodges a direct question, he's not protecting the process. He's protecting himself. Because the truth is, he's backed himself into a corner with a quarterback strategy that's built entirely on fear. Fear of change, fear of controversy, and most of all, fear of being proven wrong. That's what this is about. Not readiness. Not health. Not development. It's about the nightmare scenario where Shedeur gets real reps, steps onto that field, and starts balling out. Because if that happens, and at this point it's less if and more when, then everything Kevin Stefanski has been trying to control completely unravels. It's no longer just a quarterback question. It becomes a credibility crisis. And if you followed this team for more than a minute, you know exactly what happens next. Public pressure turns into internal chaos. The locker room fractures. Players off the record. The media pounces. Ownership gets involved. And the guy who thought he could manage the noise by staying silent ends up drowning in it. That's the fire Stefanski is playing with right now. And here's the thing. Shedeur hasn't even asked for chaos. He's done everything the right way. Rehabbed quietly. Trained professionally. Respected the coaching staff despite knowing full well that he's being strung along. He's been patient, composed, and ready. And still, they're treating him like a problem instead of solution. It's the most backward logic you could imagine. The offense is struggling. The fan base is boiling, and you've got a quarterback on the roster who checks every single box. Leadership, talent, work ethic. And instead of elevating him, you pretend he's invisible. What's the end game here? Keep suppressing him until the season slips away? Hope that Gabriel suddenly turns it around while the locker room and fans slowly revolt? It's delusional. And worst of all, it's dangerous. Not in the injury sense. In the culture sense. Because when guys in a locker room see a teammate earn something and not get it because of politics, the entire culture collapses. The message becomes, it's not about who's best. It's about who the coaches are comfortable with. That kind of dynamic, it's a death sentence for leadership. It breeds resentment. It silences merit. And it creates a division between the guys who are grinding every day and the ones getting protected. That's where the Browns are right now. They've built a wall between performance and opportunity. And Shedeur Sanders is the one being kept on the outside. And let's not pretend this is normal rookie management. The league sees through this. Fans see through this. Analysts see through this. The idea that Sanders needs more time doesn't match reality. Not when he's practicing, throwing, and clearly clear for action. Not when the offense is flatlining and the starter is barely holding it together. Not when the excuses no longer fit the facts. At this point, the only explanation that makes any sense is control. Stefanski doesn't want a quarterback controversy because it would force a reevaluation of everything. His game plan, his starter, his staff, and most importantly, his own decision-making. And so he keeps things vague. Vague enough to avoid commitment. Vague enough to dodge accountability. Vague enough to buy time. But time is running out. The Jets' game is coming up. A defense that eats rookie quarterbacks for breakfast. And frankly, doesn't go easy on veterans either. If Gabriel flames out in that matchup, there's no more space for ambiguity. Stefanski will be forced to act. And the longer he waits, the more hostile the reaction will be. Because by then, the damage will already be done. The question won't be, should Sanders play? It'll be, why didn't he play sooner? And the answer will be political, not tactical, not football-related, just politics. Which in the NFL is the ugliest answer you can give. That's the worst part about this entire situation. How avoidable it was. If Stefanski had just been honest, just said, we're evaluating, and if Shedeur keeps trending the way he is, we're going to give him a shot, he'd have earned respect. People would have understood. Players would have backed it. Fans would have bought in. But now he's created a scenario where there's no winning narrative. If Shedeur comes in and performs, Stefanski looks like he was hiding him. If Shedeur comes in and struggles, people will ask why he wasn't getting reps earlier. Either way, it's a mess. And Stefanski created it himself. That's the danger of trying to play politics with talent. Eventually, the talent forces your hand. And when that happens, all the spin in the world can't save you. Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback. He's the embodiment of a bigger issue, the fear of disruption in a league that's built on competition. And Cleveland's coaching staff is doing everything in their power to avoid that disruption, even as the cost of doing so grows by the week. They're not just suppressing a player. They're suppressing their own progress. And when that dam finally breaks, and it won't be subtle, because people remember these moments. They remember when the coaching staff chose comfort over clarity. They remember when fans were asking for a spark, and leadership refused to provide it. And they especially remember when the player they were told wasn't ready steps on the field and proves he should have been there all along. At that point, the damage isn't just to the scoreboard, it's to the reputation. And Stefanski, he won't be seen as a leader. He'll be seen as the guy who got in the way. So, if you've had enough of the silence, the vague updates, the fear-based decisions, drop your thoughts below. Should Shedeur be QB2 already? Has this coaching staff lost the locker room? Is this what accountability looks like in Cleveland? Smash that like button if you're tired of watching obvious talent get buried. Share this with someone who's done with the excuses. And hit that subscribe if you want full coverage when this situation finally explodes. Because it's not a matter of if Shedeur Sanders gets a shot. It's when. And when he does, don't forget who tried to stop it.